A god is standing on the edge of a war and choosing not to raise a weapon, not because he's weak, not because he's afraid, because he's about to do something stranger, wrap his hands around simple leather reins and limit himself to the role of a charioteer. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're already awake in the pre-dawn hush of Kurukshetra. The air is cool at first, the kind of cool that still remembers night. But it doesn't last. You can feel the day waiting behind the horizon, impatient and hot. You stand among tents pitched on sacred earth. Not far away, someone feeds a horse, whispering to it, like the animal understands politics. The horse does understand fear, though. You can smell it, warm breath, hay, sweat, and that sharp iron tang that clings to armor. Somewhere, ghee lamps burn low. Their smoke curls into the darkness, carrying sandalwood and a faint bite of camphor. The scent sticks in your hair, in your clothes, as if the night itself is trying to mark you. And then you hear it. Not the conch yet, not the shout, something simpler. Leather creaks. A chariot stands nearby, its wood polished and painted, its yoke firm, its wheels waiting for dust. The banner above it is still, because even the wind is holding its breath. You step closer, careful not to get in anyone's way, because in camps like this, in the way is a profession with a short career. The horses are restless, their ears flick at every sound. They stamp and snort, and you can see their flanks ripple under the harness. A groom murmurs and rubs their necks with practiced hands, the way one might soothe a storm cloud. And there, beside the chariot, Krishna, not on a throne, not surrounded by dancers and jasmine garlands. Here, he's dressed for travel, for dust, for a day that will grind on without mercy. You notice his hands first. They're not clenched around a longbow. They're not reaching for a discus. They move with the unhurried ease of someone tying a knot that must not slip. He checks the straps. He runs his palm along the reins, testing the leather like a musician testing a string. It's almost comical if you let yourself think it. All these kings and warriors have come dressed like living weapons, helmets, mail, bright cloth, oaths on their tongues. And the one everyone watches most is about to take the job usually given to the quietest man in the camp. The good news, you're standing near the most famous chariot in the world. The bad news, there's no spectator section. There's just ground. Behind Krishna, Arjuna is there too. He looks like a man who has done everything right and still arrived at the edge of something impossible. His longbow, Gandiva, rests close, as if it has its own heartbeat. Even in the dim, you can see the careful way he checks his gear, the way his fingers touch the string. Not nervous, not exactly. More like listening for a sound that hasn't happened yet. The camp is waking. You hear bangles clink as someone pours water. A kettle sings softly, and for one foolish moment, you think, maybe this is just a morning like any other. Then, an elephant rumbles in its sleep, an irritated, deep-throated complaint, and the spell breaks. Of course, there are elephants. Because out here, when a family argument turns deadly, someone brings elephants. The sky begins to thin from black to indigo. A line of pale light appears far off, like someone dragging a fingertip across the world. And the field beyond the tents, Kurukshetra, waits. This isn't ordinary land. People have whispered prayers on this soil for generations. Rishis have walked here. Kings have offered here. The earth has listened, patient and silent. Now it's about to listen to something else. A murmur moves through the soldiers like water through reeds. Men adjust armlets. They tighten belts. They touch small charms tied in cloth. Someone laughs too loudly, the way people do when their insides are trembling. The air changes. You smell dust even before it rises. You smell flowers crushed underfoot. You smell the sour edge of sleeplessness. Krishna climbs onto the chariot with the ease of someone stepping into a familiar room. No ceremony, no hesitation. He gathers the reins into his hands, and you realize what that means. He has chosen a boundary. He has chosen to stand in front of thousands, friends, enemies, elders, students, kings, and act as the driver. To be the one who steers, not the one who strikes. Someone nearby whispers the vow, as if saying it softly might make it easier to hold. I will not lift a weapon. You can almost feel the weight of that promise settle onto the morning. Promises are heavy in this world. They don't float away. They sink into you. A conch sounds in the distance, low at first, then swelling. Another answers, then another. The noise rolls across the field, bouncing off armor, off chariot frames, off the very ribs of the earth. It's not just sound. It's an announcement to every heartbeat. Wake up. This is real. Birds burst from the trees in a ragged scatter. Horses toss their heads. Somewhere, a bell rings from a small shrine, thin and brave against the roar. And still, Krishna's hands stay steady on the reins. You watch his fingers, calm, sure, almost gentle. A charioteer's hands, not a conqueror's. The chariot creaks as weight settles onto it. The wood smells sun-warmed even before the sun appears, like it has been waiting all night to be used. The metal fittings are cool in the last of the darkness. Arjuna steps up behind Krishna, and the space between them feels charged. Not with anger, with responsibility, because this is what is about to happen. You will ride with them into the space between two oceans of men. You will feel the tremble of the horses as banners rise like bright, restless birds. You will hear names spoken, Bhishma, Drona, Karna, names that carry decades of training and loyalty and impossible choices. And before the first arrow flies, before the first cry rises, you will be pulled backward through memory to Upaplavya, where a single offer split the world into two kinds of desire, to the long roads where hospitality became a trap dressed as kindness, to a mother's grief that hardened into a curse, heavy enough to reach even Krishna. But for now, you stay here. In the blue dark hour, with incense thinning in the air, with dust waiting under the wheels, the conches keep calling. Krishna tightens the reins by a hair, just enough to tell the horses, soon. He doesn't look hurried. He doesn't look uncertain. Only intent. The chariot is ready. The dawn is ready. And the hands that could have held a weapon are holding the world steady instead. But the reins were chosen long before Kurukshetra, before the first arrow, before the conch shells, to a room where two cousins waited for the same god to choose. Upaplavya is awake in that bright, busy way cities get when something enormous is coming. Courtyards fill with footfalls. Messengers come and go like startled birds. Every well has a small crowd around it. drawing water, trading rumors, pretending they're only there for water. The air smells of crushed marigold and lamp smoke, and underneath it all, the sharper scent of oiled leather, new harnesses, fresh straps. People don't say the word war every moment. They don't have to. You can smell it. You're standing just outside Virata's hall, in the shade where the stone stays cool. Inside, the Pandavas' council keeps swelling and thinning as allies arrive. A king from one side, a prince from another. Old warriors with tired eyes, young ones with hands that won't stay still. The room is dressed for dignity, silk hangings, polished pillars, a clean sweep of floor. But you can feel the restlessness under it, like a drum skin pulled too tight. This isn't a celebration. It's people trying to make destiny sit politely. And the strange thing is, even here, surrounded by men with longbows taller than themselves, the name that keeps returning is Krishna, not his army, not his weapons, him. Because if Krishna stands with you, it feels like the ground itself leans your way. So they send for him. And of course, the other side sends too. At first, it's only talk. Who will reach him first? Who will flatter him best? Who has the stronger claim? Then it becomes a race disguised as courtesy. Arjuna goes. Duryodhana goes. They arrive in Dwaraka like two storms arriving at the same coastline. The road to the sea is long and hot, heat that makes even a proud man's temper fray at the edges. Dust clings to the hems of robes. Horses breathe hard. Even the metal on a chariot rail feels impatient under your palm. When the city finally rises ahead, it doesn't look like a place that worries about anything. Dwaraka shines, white walls, bright banners, the constant pulse of the ocean nearby, steady as a heartbeat. The breeze tastes faintly of salt. It cools the sweat on your neck and makes you believe, for one silly moment, that peace might be easy. It isn't. They're led into Krishna's palace, where everything is smooth stone and shaded corridors. You can hear water somewhere. Fountains, channels, the soft brag of wealth that never has to shout. Servants move like they've been trained by music. And then comes the ridiculous part. Krishna is asleep, not resting with one eye open, not meditating. Asleep. A god on a couch, breathing slow, as if the world has never demanded anything from him at all. If you've traveled days with dust in your teeth and politics in your throat, it almost feels insulting. Duryodhana arrives first. He slips into the chamber like a man entering a treasury, quiet, pleased with himself, already counting the coins. He chooses a seat at Krishna's head. It's a small choice. The sort of small choice men make when they're convinced the universe is a ladder and they were born to climb it. Then Arjuna arrives. He sees Duryodhana. He understands instantly. And instead of making it a contest of chairs, he does something that looks almost too simple. He stands at Krishna's feet. No trumpet, no announcement, just a warrior waiting, hands folded, gaze lowered, letting the room be what it is. You can feel the tension in the air anyway, like two drawn bowstrings sharing the same space. The chamber smells of sandalwood and something sweet, maybe flowers crushed earlier, maybe oil warmed by skin. Outside, you can hear the distant gull cry of the sea. Inside, it's so quiet, you start noticing your own breath. Time passes in slow drops. And then Krishna wakes. He stretches like a man who slept deeply, like someone who has no fear of being attacked in his own bed. His eyes open and the world sharpens. He looks first, naturally, toward his feet. He sees Arjuna there. A smile touches his face, immediate and warm, the kind that makes you think he's about to tease you for being too serious. Then his gaze lifts, and he sees Duryodhana seated at his head, like a king who has already won. Krishna doesn't scowl, he doesn't scold, but there's the faintest pause. A pause that feels like a conch held to the lips right before the blast. Krishna acknowledges them both. He hears both requests, and he makes it fair in the way only Krishna can, fair like a knife edge. He tells them he has two things to offer. One is his Narayana army, an ocean of soldiers armored and trained, enough to make other kings swallow hard. The other is himself, but he adds the condition like a garland placed over iron. He will not take up a weapon, he will not fight, he will be present, he will counsel, he will drive a chariot if asked. But his hands will not close around a longbow. You're right there, you can feel it. The shift in both men, the moment the offer hangs in the air. It's like watching two gamblers realize the stakes have changed, and neither wants to blink. Krishna gives the first choice to Arjuna, not because Arjuna stood at his feet, though that doesn't hurt, not because Duryodhana chose the head, though that doesn't help, because Arjuna is younger, because it's proper, because Krishna is making the rules in his own room. Arjuna doesn't reach for the army, he chooses Krishna. He chooses the unarmed man with the vow that sounds, at first, like limitation. Duryodhana's relief is almost visible. He takes the Narayana host as if it's a platter being set into his hands. And really, who wouldn't? A war is coming. Numbers matter, elephants matter, chariots matter. If you can buy an ocean, you buy an ocean. Duryodhana leaves pleased, already imagining how the ground will shake under those troops. Arjuna leaves with something quieter, a promise, and a strange, heavy peace that feels like standing near a river just before it floods. Krishna watches them both go, and in his eyes there's something that doesn't look like victory. It looks like inevitability, handled gently, as if he's just handed each man exactly what he asked for, and exactly what he deserved. Back in Upaplavya, when Krishna finally arrives at the Pandavas' camp, the city seems to inhale around him. Trumpets don't blare like a parade. It's subtler than that. People straighten their backs, servants stop whispering, even horses lift their heads. He steps into the council hall with dust on his sandals and sea wind still clinging to him. His yellow cloth catches the light. His presence feels both ordinary and unbearable. You're close enough to smell the travel on him. Sun, salt, and the faint tang of chariot, wood. And under it, the familiar sweetness of sandal paste. The brothers rise. Yudhishthira's face is careful, as always, careful as a man balancing a pot full of fire. Bhima looks like he's restraining himself from asking 10 questions at once. The twins are attentive, quiet, eyes flicking to every movement. And Arjuna. Arjuna looks relieved in a way he won't say out loud, because the choice is already made. Krishna is here. Not with an army, not with marching lines and banners, with himself. He sits among them as if he belongs there, as if this hall in Upaplavya is as natural to him as his sea city palace. He listens while plans are spoken, while alliances are counted, while names are weighed like coins. But beneath all that strategy, you can feel the real thing everyone wants. They want the steadiness in him. The kind of steadiness that doesn't wobble when the world wobbles. Krishna reminds them, gently, what he has promised. No weapon, no striking down, no battlefield, glory. He will guide, and that vow strange as it sounds, lands like a stone, placed exactly where a foundation needs it. Now the hall feels colder. No one expects a discus to save them. They look at their own hands and swallow. And yet, Krishna is still there. If you listen closely, you can hear the trap hidden inside the gift, the way a fisherman hides a hook inside something shining. Duryodhana has won the army, but an army eats food, it drinks water, it panics, it boasts, it breaks formation, it runs when the dust is too thick. A human ocean behaves like an ocean. It surges, it recedes. Krishna, unarmed, will not surge. He will not recede. He will sit on a chariot and see the whole field. He will speak at the moment a man's courage melts. He will hold the reins when the horses want to bolt. In the council hall, it becomes clear how the choice is already shaping everything. The Pandavas don't have to wonder where Krishna stands. He is right there, close enough to touch. And there's another twist, softer, almost tender. With his vow hanging in the air, the easy dream dies. In that hall, no one dares whisper, "He'll do it for us." Their fear has nowhere to hide. If victory comes, it will come through exhausted arms, shaking breath, and hard choices. It will come through men like Bhima, who must master his rage, men like Yudhishthira, who must live with whatever right costs, men like Arjuna, who must lift his longbow even when his heart argues with him. You're sitting at the edge of the hall now, where the shade meets the sunlit floor. You can feel the warmth on your toes and the cool stone under your heels. Outside, someone is lighting lamps, though it's still day. Ghee and wick, that homey smell that makes even dread feel domestic. Somewhere, a conch sounds, not for battle yet, just for ritual. One long note that seems to travel down the corridors and into your bones. Krishna's attention moves around the room like a calm hand, smoothing rumpled cloth. He doesn't need to raise his voice. He doesn't need to threaten. He speaks, and people lean in. He lays out what must happen next. Messages, embassies, last attempts at peace, made because decency demands the attempt, even when hope is thin. He speaks of going to Hastinapura himself, walking into that court like a torch carried into a room full of oil. And for a moment, just a moment, the room lets itself imagine it. Duryodhana relenting, Dhritarashtra finding strength, Bhishma and Drona putting their feet down. A world where the bowstrings stay unpulled. But the imagination doesn't last long, because everyone in this hall has seen pride up close. They've seen it sit on a throne and call itself righteousness. Krishna's vow not to fight doesn't feel like weakness here. It feels like the hardest kind of restraint, like holding back a river with your bare hands, not because you can't release it, but because you choose not to drown the world. And Arjuna, sitting near him, looks at Krishna the way a traveler looks at a familiar star. Not because it will carry him, but because it will keep him from getting lost. The plans continue. The lamps burn lower. Outside, Upaplavya keeps breathing. Vendors closing their stalls, guards changing shifts, children being shooed indoors. The smell of night begins to creep in. Cooling dust, jasmine opening somewhere, smoke from cook fires settling into the dark. And somewhere far away, on another road, Duryodhana's new army is already moving. Boots and wheels, banners and drums. He thinks he has taken the greater gift. In Upaplavya, you can feel the quieter gift settling into place beside the Pandavas like a seated friend. A god who will not fight. A god who will not leave. And far ahead, already waiting, in the blue dark hour you started from. A chariot stands ready, and the hands that could have held a longbow are preparing instead to hold the reins. Arjuna chose Krishna over 11 armies, and in the dimming lamps of Upaplavya, with plans still murmuring in corners, you can almost feel the question hanging in the air like incense smoke. What exactly did he choose to sit beside him in that chariot? Krishna doesn't look like a storm. He looks like a man who has been awake for a long time, even when his eyes are calm. The courtyard is cooler now. Night wind slides along the stone, carrying the smell of jasmine and old ghee from the lamps. Somewhere a horse stamps, impatient in its stall, as if it already knows it will be asked to run toward doom at dawn. You're close enough to see Krishna's hands when he folds them, steady, ordinary hands, the kind that could hold reins, or break bread, or wipe a child's face. Hands that have been busy since he was barely big enough to reach a butter pot. In your mind, the palace walls soften. They turn into mud-plastered huts, into moonlit fields, into a village where the air always tastes faintly of milk. Gokul. You can smell it. Warm curd, cow dust, smoky hearths that never fully go out. The lanes are narrow, and your feet kick up dry earth. Somewhere, a peacock calls like it's laughing at its own joke. And there he is, a small boy with big eyes and a mouth that is absolutely not innocent. He moves like he belongs to every doorway, like he owns the whole village and also knows exactly how to slip away when someone shouts his name. You can almost hear the clink of bangles as the women of the house turn their backs for one moment, and that's all it takes. Krishna is already climbing, not like a child who might fall, like a child who has done this 100 times and still finds it delightful every time. He reaches into the clay pot, fingers sinking into butter so soft it shines. He eats like he's tasting a secret. He smears a little on his cheek, and somehow that makes him look even more pleased with himself. Behind him, the calves shuffle and snort, hoping for their share. The butter thieves of the animal world. And if you're standing there in that doorway with him, if you're really there, you feel a ridiculous urge to whisper a warning, because someone is coming. A mother's footsteps, quick, certain. The sound of a woman who has already forgiven him 5 times today and is still going to scold him like it's a sacred duty. Krishna hears it too. He should run. He doesn't. He just turns, blinking slowly, butter on his fingers, and gives her the look of a person who has never heard of rules in his entire life. Yashoda's voice snaps through the house, sharp with love. She points at the mess, at the empty pot, at the little footprints dusted in white. She demands to know where the butter went. And this is the part that always makes you want to laugh softly. He looks around, as if he's also searching for the culprit, as if the butter climbed out and walked away on its own. The air is thick with ghee sweetness and warm milk. A lamp flickers. A cowbell clinks outside, slow and steady, like time itself. Then the world shifts. Because even in Gokul, even in the middle of butter and laughter, danger comes. Not with drums, not with banners, with footsteps that don't belong, a shadow at the edge of a courtyard, a presence that makes the dogs go quiet, a wrongness like a cold draft slipping under a door. You feel it in your stomach first. Krishna feels it too. He's still so small, bare feet, a smear of butter, a child's soft arm. And yet, when the threat moves toward him, something in him changes, not into a monster, not into some terrible spectacle, into stillness, a calm so deep it's almost unfair. The thing that comes for him, demon on hunger, whatever shape it wears, doesn't get what it wanted. It reaches for a child and finds itself facing something older than fear. The struggle is brief in the way lightning is brief, a blur, a sharp inhale from everyone watching. And then the courtyard is quiet again, except for the ordinary sounds returning. Cows shifting, a baby crying somewhere, a woman whispering a prayer with shaking hands. Krishna stands there like nothing happened, as if this too is just part of being a child. That's the first weight, not strength, responsibility that arrives before you even learn to tie a knot in your hair. And the years keep piling on like monsoon clouds. You blink and the boy is older. The lanes are the same, but his shoulders have lengthened. His laughter is louder now, bouncing off the trees near the river. The Yamuna slides by, dark and cool, carrying the scent of wet mud and lotus stems. You can hear flutes in the distance, thin and sweet in the evening air, the kind of sound that makes even tired hearts lift. The village loves him the way villages love their own, completely, noisily, with hands always reaching to touch his head, to offer him fruit, to complain to him about some stubborn cow as if he's the official fixer of all things. And he is. Someone's calf is missing. Someone's child has a fever. Someone's husband has wandered off to gamble. Someone's roof is leaking again. They come to Krishna with problems the way people come to a well. They don't even think about it. You can see him listening, nodding, smiling, already carrying a dozen small burdens before sunset. Then the sky changes, not gradually, not politely. A storm comes, like an invasion. Wind rips through the trees. Rain slaps the earth hard enough to make it jump. The cattle bellow, frightened. The river swells, growling in the dark. The villagers run, drenched in seconds, hair plastered to their faces, their clothes heavy with water. They gather their children, their old ones, their trembling calves. They look for shelter and find none that can stand against a sky like this. And then, because this is what always happens, eyes turn to Krishna. Not because he asked them to, because they can't help it. You're standing among them, soaked to the bone, rain in your eyelashes, the cold bite of water running down your spine. You taste mud and fear. You hear the awful crack of branches splitting. Krishna steps forward into that chaos like he's stepping into his own courtyard. He looks at the mountain nearby, Govardhan, dark and solid against the storm's white fury. And he does something that should be impossible. He lifts it, not with strain carved into his face, not with roaring effort. He simply raises his hand, and the mountain rises with it, as if the earth itself has decided to obey him for a while. The villagers rush beneath the rocky overhang, pressed close together, shivering and wide-eyed. Cows crowd in, warm breath steaming in the damp air. Children cry, then quiet, then stare. And Krishna, teenage Krishna, stands there holding a mountain as if it's an umbrella. Time stretches. Hours. The rain keeps trying. The wind keeps arguing. Krishna keeps holding. Someone, somewhere in that cramped shelter, tries to offer him food, because of course they do. As if a boy holding up a mountain might get hungry. He grins at that. He even makes room for jokes, the way he always does. Like humor is another kind of shelter. You can feel what it costs, though, not in his muscles, in the fact that everyone's survival is resting on a single raised hand. In the fact that once people learn you can do this, they will ask for it again. They will ask with their eyes. They will ask with their prayers. They will ask with their panic. And you won't always be able to say no, because who can watch a village drown? When the storm finally breaks and the clouds limp away, the earth is slick and shining. The air smells like wet leaves and relief. The villagers spill out into the open, blinking at the sky like it's a trick. Krishna lowers Govardhan gently, like setting down a sleeping child. And everyone cheers. Everyone touches his feet. Everyone calls his name. And somewhere inside that boy, behind the laughter, behind the ease, another layer settles. The weight of being the answer. Years pass again. The scent of milk fades into the salt sting of the sea. Now you're on a shore where the wind is sharp and restless. Waves slap against rock. The horizon is wide enough to make you feel small, and the sky is bleached with sun. Krishna is not a village boy here. He is a king. Not the kind who sits still, the kind who moves. He stands with people who have followed him through fire and loss, and their faces carry the tired hope of those who have been chased too long. They need a place that cannot be taken from them easily. A place where their children can sleep without clutching knives. So, Krishna gives them a city. Dwaraka rises from the sea like a promise. You can almost see it taking shape, stone hauled and set, walls climbing, streets laid out, courtyards planned for shade. The sound of hammers rings all day. The smell of fresh-cut timber mixes with ocean spray. Conch shells blow from boats as if the sea itself is announcing the work. And when it's done, Dwaraka gleams. Sunlight strikes its roofs and throws it back into the sky. Flags snap in the wind. Markets fill with turmeric and cloth and shining brass. Children run along clean streets, laughing, barefoot, and fearless. People say his name in that city the way people say the word safe. And still, at night, when lamps burn low and the sea keeps breathing in the dark, Krishna walks alone on the palace terrace. You can be there too, if you want. You feel the cool stone under your feet. You hear the hush of waves below, endless and indifferent. The air tastes of salt and distant smoke from cooking fires. He looks out at the water, and his face is peaceful. Not happy. Peaceful in the way someone looks when they already know what the morning will bring, and what the morning after that will bring, and what it will cost. Because it never stops. A messenger arrives, dusty from the road. A cousin needs help. A king wants counsel. A mother is crying for her child. A friend is about to make a choice that will split the world. Everyone turns to Krishna. In Gokul, it was butter and demons and storms. In Dwaraka, it is politics and vows and endless human hunger. And now, in Upaplavya, it is a war so large, the earth itself seems to brace for it. Krishna sits among the Pandavas like a quiet lamp. He listens, he advises, he carries what others cannot. And even when he says he will not lift a weapon, even when he offers only his presence, people cling to it like it's the last solid thing in a shaking world. You watch him in that late-night hall. You notice the way he breathes, slow and measured, as if he's keeping his own vastness folded neatly inside his ribs. You notice how others speak louder when they're nervous, how they rush, how they sharpen their words like blades. Krishna doesn't. He lets their fear break against him and fall away. He has been doing this since he was small enough to be scolded for butter. He has held up mountains. He has raised cities out of the sea. And still, the heaviest thing he carries isn't any of that. It's the knowing. He knows how this road ends. He knows which banners will fall, which songs will go quiet, Which mothers will count their losses on their fingers until their hands are empty? He knows, and he comes anyway. Outside, Upaplavya's night deepens. The lamps gutter. The jasmine scent thickens. Somewhere, a guard coughs, trying to stay awake. A dog turns in its sleep, and Krishna, who could be thunder, who could be fire, remains only a man in a hall full of warriors. A man who will sit on a chariot and take the reins. A man who will not fight, not because he cannot, because he is carrying something heavier than a weapon, and he will not set it down. But there's something else, something that happened at the end of the war, when the earth was still warm from chariot wheels, and the wind still tasted of old smoke. A mother's voice, and a god who chose not to move. In Hastinapura, the palace does not look like a palace anymore. It looks like a shell people keep walking through out of habit. The courtyards are swept, the lamps are lit, incense still burns, sandalwood and sweet resin, but even the perfume feels tired, like it's been working too hard. And in the middle of it all sits Gandhari. She is a queen, yes, but she is also a woman with cloth tied tight over her eyes, the knot dug into her hairline, the world made dark by her own choice. You can almost feel the heat trapped under that blindfold, the faint itch that never goes away, the way the skin beneath it must ache. She does not remove it, not for food, not for sleep, not even now, because if her husband cannot see, she will not see either. That vow has been with her so long it has become part of her breathing. And now, for 18 days, the war comes to her through sound. Not the clang of weapons, those are far away. No, this war arrives softly, like footsteps in a hallway. It arrives as Sanjaya's voice. It arrives as a court that keeps swallowing its own fear. You're standing just behind a pillar, half hidden in shadow, and you watch how everyone moves differently around her. Courtiers who once strutted now glide. Servants who used to chatter now place trays down without a sound. Even the palace birds seem to hush, as if they know this is not a room where anyone wants to be remembered. Dhritarashtra sits close, his blind eyes fixed toward nothing. His hands worry the edge of his robe. Every day he demands the news. Every day he flinches at the answer. And Gandhari listens the way people listen to a river they can't cross. She keeps count, not on a scroll, not on her fingers. In her mind, at dawn, someone brings her plain food she barely touches. At noon, the heat presses into the stone floors and the air goes still. By evening, when the lamps are lit and the shadows turn soft and long, Sanjaya begins again. He describes banners. He describes dust rising in curtains. He describes conches that shake the ribs. He describes heroes falling like tall trees in a storm. And after each report, there is always a pause, a tiny pause. That's the moment Gandhari waits for, because in that pause, she knows the names are coming. You can almost hear her thoughts moving like prayer beads. One son, another, 100 sons once. Impossible, like a whole forest of young sal trees. Now the forest is being counted down, one trunk at a time. Some days, the names come like a flood. Some days, it is only one. But even one is enough to make the room feel smaller. The blindfold does not hide her face from you. You can see her mouth tighten. You can see the way her chin lifts, proud and steady, as if she is refusing to give grief the satisfaction of toppling her. But her hands betray her. They grip the cloth of her sari until the fabric creases hard. They press against her knee, and you realize She is anchoring herself to her own body so she won't sway. Outside the palace, you can hear ordinary life trying to continue. A water seller calling, a cartwheel squeaking, some child laughing before being shushed. It's almost absurd. This huge war-swallowing kingdoms, while a dog still barks at the same old gate. And yet, inside this chamber, time becomes nothing but waiting for the next name. On the day Bhishma falls, Sanjaya's voice changes. It goes reverent, like he stepped into a temple. He speaks of the grandsire pierced and yet still alive, lying on a bed of arrows, as if the battlefield itself has turned into his couch. You feel the whole hall lean in, hungry for the comfort of a rule, a boundary, a legend that says something still makes sense. Gandhari does not speak, but the muscles in her jaw jump once, sharply, like something struck flint inside her, because Bhishma is not her son. And still, he is family. Still, he is one more pillar cracking. Day after day, the reports come. Drona takes command. The fighting swells. The vows made before the battle, those neat, noble promises about equal fighting, equal, start to fray like old rope in rain. And always, always, the names. Sometimes, Dhritarashtra mutters that it cannot be true. Sometimes, he demands to hear it again, as if repetition might turn it into a different ending. Sometimes, he goes very quiet, which is worse. You're close enough to smell the ghee from the lamps and the faint sourness of sweat trapped under silk and jewelry. No one sleeps well in this palace anymore, not even the guards, especially not the guards, because every time footsteps approach the chamber, everyone thinks the same thing. More news, more loss, more names. Gandhari's blindfold remains perfectly in place. She does not loosen it, even a finger's width. And in that darkness, she builds a picture anyway. A mother does that. She cannot see Kurukshetra, but Kurukshetra comes to her, through Sanjaya's sight, through the tremor in his breath, through the way his words sometimes stumble when he reaches a moment too heavy to carry smoothly. Somewhere around the middle of the war, she stops asking which son fell where. Not because she doesn't care, because the where has become meaningless. A field is a field. A weapon is a weapon. A son is gone. And at night, when the palace finally quiets, you imagine her lying awake, the cloth still over her eyes, listening to the insects outside, and counting again, just to be sure she hasn't forgotten anyone. Not a queen counting an army. A mother counting her children. By the 18th day, the air in Hastinapura feels thin, like the palace itself has been holding its breath for 2 weeks and can't do it anymore. Sanjaya arrives, dust on his clothes, as if the battlefield's wind has followed him all the way back, determined to make the message unmistakable. He speaks. The words come out steady, too steady almost. Victory for the Pandavas, defeat for the sons of Dhritarashtra, and then the rest. Duryodhana fallen, the great warriors gone, the field quieting into something like sorrow. In that moment, you hear a sound that is not a cry. It's not even a sob. It's the softest exhale from Gandhari, as if her body has finally set down a weight it was never meant to carry. Her hands lift slowly and rest in her lap. Dhritarashtra makes a small animal noise in his throat and reaches for her, searching for her arm like a drowning man searching for a branch. She lets him hold on. She does not comfort him with words. What words could fit? The palace begins to move again, but now the movement is different. It's not the tense flutter of a court waiting for war news. It's the heavy shuffling of people preparing for mourning, white cloth, ashes, offerings. The smell changes, less perfume, more smoke, more plain oil, more flowers crushed in anxious hands. And then, not long after, the royal party goes out to Kurukshetra. You go with them, walking behind the carts and elephants, under a sky too open for what's happened beneath it. The road is dry, dust rises and coats everyone's feet. The sun is bright and indifferent, as suns always are. And when you finally reach the field, even the birds are quiet. Kurukshetra is not a place of glory now. It is a place of stillness, a wide, wide stillness. The wind drags over the ground, lifting little spirals of dust that collapse again, as if even the air can't keep its shape. Gandhari steps down from her conveyance. Her feet touch the earth. She pauses, and you can feel it. This is the first time she has stood close enough to the war for her body to understand what her mind has been swallowing for days. She walks forward, slowly, carefully. The blindfold is still there, so she reaches out with her hands, not to see, but to find. A torn banner, a broken wheel, a piece of armor lying like shed skin. People guide her, speaking low, voices cracked from mourning. And then she is brought to where her sons fell, where Duryodhana lies among the fallen, where the last hopes of her house have ended in the plain light of day. The air smells of dust and trampled grass and old smoke and something metallic that your mind doesn't want to name. Gandhari's shoulders lift once, as if she's been struck. She stands very still. Then her hands rise to the knot behind her head. For a moment, no one breathes. She unties the cloth. The blindfold loosens. Light touches her eyes again after so long, and you can almost imagine the sting of it, the tears that might come from nothing but brightness. She looks, not wildly, not dramatically. She looks the way a mother looks when she has run out of bargaining. And the grief that rises in her is not soft. It is not gentle. It is not the kind grief that makes you want to be comforted. It is grief that turns into a blade, because grief needs somewhere to go. And on that field, the only person powerful enough to hold it without shattering steps forward. Krishna comes, not with a weapon, not with a crown, just Krishna, dust on his skin, the same calm in his face that you saw in Upaplavya, as if calm is the one thing he can always afford. You are close enough now to hear the dry grass whisper under sandals, close enough to feel the heat rising off the ground. Gandhari faces him. Her eyes are open. They are fierce. They have waited too long in darkness. She does not speak like a queen addressing an ally. She speaks like a mother whose children have been taken while the gods watched. She pours it out. How he could have stopped it. How he could have turned hearts. How he stood there with power in his hands and still let the world break. Her words are not pretty. They are not measured. They are true in the way lightning is true. And then she lays the curse on him, not whispered, not ceremonial. A mother's curse, flung like a handful of burning ash. She calls for his people, the Yadavas, the Vrishnis, to meet the same kind of ending, to turn against each other, to fall not by foreign hands, but by their own ruin, to leave him, Krishna, standing among the wreckage, unable to stop it. You feel the air tighten around those words, as if even the wind is listening. If anyone else had been cursed like that, they might have protested. They might have pleaded, or tried to soften her, or reached for cleverness. Krishna does none of it. He stands there and takes it. You watch his face. No anger, no pride, no wounded divinity, just a quiet acceptance settling into him, like a garment he has worn before. He bows his head slightly, as if he is receiving an offering, not an attack. And in a voice that does not tremble, he gives her only this, one small phrase, simple enough to fall asleep on. So be it. That's all. No argument, no defense, no flashing sign of power, only consent. Around them, the survivors stand frozen. Pandavas who have won and feel no joy, old men who can barely stand, women holding the edges of their shawls like lifelines. The field is full of the defeated and the victorious, and somehow everyone looks the same in that moment, dusty, hollow, human. Gandhari's breath shakes once, not because she regrets it, because even vengeance is heavy when you carry it in a mother's body. She turns away from Krishna and walks back toward her husband, toward Kunti, toward the rest of them, toward the long work of living after the end. And Krishna remains where he is, still, quiet, as if he has allowed another chain to be placed around his own neck, not forged of iron, forged of a mother's grief. You're standing there with him, feeling the late day sun press down, hearing nothing but the soft hiss of wind through grass. And you realize something deep in your bones. This God who refused to lift a weapon does not refuse consequences. He does not slip away from sorrow. He does not dodge the weight of what's been done. He accepts the curse the way he accepted the reins, with open hands, with lowered head, with the same steady breath, because some burdens aren't meant to be avoided. They're meant to be carried. And on that wide, exhausted field, as the light begins to soften and the shadows lengthen, Krishna turns at last, slowly, and walks away through the dust, already moving toward the next ending waiting for him. The sun is higher now, and the kindness of dawn is already gone. Heat presses down on the plain like a heavy palm. Dust hangs in the air, so fine it finds the corners of your eyes and turns every breath warm and gritty. Somewhere far off, a conch calls again, and the sound rolls over the field like a wave you can't step aside from. And even if you want to stay with that later day, Gandhari's curse, Krishna walking away, you can't. Not yet, because the rains come first. So there he is, the god who wouldn't fight, sitting in a wooden chariot already powdered with dust, guiding 4 restless horses through a field where banners lean and wheels bite into the earth. And you're there too, close enough to feel it. You're standing in Arjuna's place, right behind Krishna's shoulders. You feel the chariot shudder under you, feel the horsehair plume on your helmet tickle your cheek when the wind shifts. Gandiva is in your hands, and it feels familiar in the way a storm feels. Familiar, beautiful, dangerous, ready. Krishna doesn't wear armor, no shining plates, no protective charms dangling from his neck, just cloth, dust, sunlight, and those steady hands holding leather reins that squeak when he tightens them. The first thing you notice is the sound, not the grand conches, not the drums, the small sounds, the creak of the chariot frame, the clink of Arjuna's bracelets as you lift the longbow, the soft, impatient snort of the horses, as if they'd rather be anywhere else in the world, including a river full of crocodiles. Then the field surges toward you. A line of enemy chariots comes like a moving wall, standards bobbing, wheels spinning, sunlight flashing off metal. Arrows arrive in a dark swarm, so many that the sky seems briefly busy with them. Your stomach drops, not from fear exactly, from the pure, simple understanding that every inch matters now, And Krishna smiles, not wide, not playful, just that small curve at the corner of his mouth, like he knows the exact shape of the movement and isn't impressed by its noise. The chariot moves. It doesn't just roll forward, it darts. Krishna pulls the reins. The horses obey like they've practiced this dance for years. Left, sharp, right, then a stop that makes your teeth tap together. An arrow hisses past the space where your throat was a heartbeat ago. You realize something with a strange, quiet shock. He's not protecting himself. He's protecting you. You can feel it in the way he places the chariot, always giving you the clean line, always keeping your flank from opening, always turning your enemies into targets instead of threats. And all the while, his own body stays exposed, sunlit, unarmored, as if daring fate to try. If you look down, you see the horses' shoulders slick with sweat, their harnesses darkened. The air smells of hot leather, churned soil, and the sharp bite of iron warmed by sun. When the wind shifts, you catch a breath of something sweeter, crushed grass, trampled and releasing its last perfume. Arjuna's arms don't get to be tired, not in the way ordinary arms do. Even so, you feel the ache begin, deep in the shoulders from holding tension that never ends. You feel the sting in your fingers where the bowstring snaps back again and again, quick as thought. More arrows come. Some strike the chariot rail, some thud into the wood inside with a sound like a mallet on a drum. A few find the flagstaff and make it tremble, shivering above your head. And still, Krishna drives like he's steering through a crowded street in Dwaraka. Alert, precise, mildly annoyed with anyone who won't move. Once, an enemy warrior aims straight at Krishna. You see the intent before the arrow even flies. The man's shoulders set, his gaze locks. The shot comes like a decision made long ago. Your body wants to lunge forward to cover Krishna with your own, which is ridiculous. You're a warrior, yes, but you're not a wall. Krishna tilts the chariot half a handspan. That's all. The arrow passes so close. You hear it. Thin, vicious, slicing the air beside his hair. It goes on to bury itself somewhere behind you, forgotten. Krishna doesn't even turn his head. He only flicks the reins and the horses leap, and you're moving again. If you have the energy to be amazed, it slips in like a secret. This is what it feels like to fight beside someone who sees the whole field at once. Not just chariots and elephants and standards, but timing, openings, the exact heartbeat when a man's guard drops because he blinked against dust. And Krishna gives you those heartbeats like gifts. The days blur that way. Morning heat, noon glare so bright it flattens the world into gold and brown. Late afternoon when shadows finally lengthen and the dust turns orange, as if the sun itself is tired. Sometimes, between clashes, you hear the Ganga in your memory. Cool water, quiet banks. Then an arrow snaps that dream in half, and you're back in the churn of Kurukshetra. You're there when great warriors advance like storms. Bhishma, white-haired and terrible, seems to carry an age with him. Every oath, every lesson, every mistake that ever hardened into habit. When his chariot rolls forward, even brave men swallow hard, and Krishna, still unarmored, drives straight into that hurricane, placing Arjuna exactly where he needs to be, as if the space in front of Bhishma has always been reserved. At one point, the pressure becomes so heavy, it feels like the air itself is pushing you backward. The chariot shakes. The horses scream in their own language of fear and effort. You taste dust. You taste sweat. You taste that metallic tang in the mouth that comes when your body decides it will keep going no matter what your mind thinks. Krishna's voice comes low, meant for Arjuna alone. He doesn't waste words. He doesn't decorate the moment. He points with his chin, shifts the chariot, gives you a line. He reminds you, quietly, of what you came here for when your heart tries to wobble. And the strange part is this. Even when the field is loud, even when everything shakes, his presence makes a pocket of stillness around you. Not silence, something steadier, like standing near a lamp in a storm. You're so close, you can see the fine dust clinging to the corner of his eyelash. You notice a smear of mud on his forearm, dried and cracked like riverbank clay. You notice, absurd detail, how calm his hands look on the reins, while the whole world tries to tear itself apart. There are moments, too, when you almost laugh, because war is endless seriousness. And still, life slips its little jokes in. An enemy chariot charges with a banner so huge it catches the wind and yanks the pole sideways, nearly tipping the whole thing. For one ridiculous instant, the mighty warrior looks less like a terror and more like a man wrestling a stubborn tent in monsoon season. Krishna's mouth twitches again, that almost smile. Then he whips your chariot around the clumsy charge, and the moment is gone. Another time, your horses, magnificent creatures born for speed, choose the worst possible instant to argue with each other. Their ears pin back, their hooves stamp, and Krishna has to correct them with a sharp tug like a patient man guiding proud young princes out of trouble. Even divinity, it seems, must occasionally negotiate with horse opinions. But the field doesn't let humor stay long, because somewhere in that widening tide of days, Karna comes closer. You feel it before you see him clearly. A tightening in the air, a pressure. He's like a bright blade in sunlight, too sharp to look at comfortably. His armor gleams, his longbow is ready, his chariot rolls steady, and the men around him move with that particular caution people have near a fire. When Karna's arrows come, they don't feel random, they feel aimed. They hum past your ear and bury themselves in wood with a confidence that makes your skin prickle. One grazes the chariot rail so close, it shivers under your palm. You shoot back, and the world narrows into a clean, ruthless focus. Draw, loose, breathe, draw again. Krishna keeps you alive inside that narrowness. He turns the horses at the last instant. He makes the chariot dip and rise over churned earth. He places you where the sun is behind you, so your enemy squints. He slides you away when the line is wrong, then returns you when it's right. And all the while, his own body remains the easiest target on the chariot. You can't stop noticing it. His shoulder is right there, his ribs, the side of his neck where an arrow could end everything, if gods ended that way. And still, he holds only reins. The day that matters arrives like all the others do, too quickly, with heat already gathered, dust already waiting. The field is rougher now, not just trampled, but carved by wheels and hooves and falling men. The earth has been broken and broken again, until it feels like it's lost patience with being solid. You're in the chariot, and the wood beneath your feet is warm from sun and friction. Your mouth is dry, your eyes sting. Krishna guides the horses forward, and you see Karna again, closer than before. The space between you is a corridor of tension. Arrows trade across it. Some are deflected, some find wood, some find air and vanish into the haze. as if swallowed by the day. Then it happens. Karna's chariot wheel bites into the torn earth and sinks. Not dramatically at first, just enough. The wheel spins, throws dust, fails to climb free. The horses strain, their harnesses pulling tight. For a moment, Karna's perfect forward motion, his certainty, stutters. It's like watching a mighty river catch on a hidden rock. Karna leans down, trying to free it. You see him shift his weight, see the brief, sharp urgency in his movement. And suddenly, the field feels quiet around you, in that strange way it does when destiny holds its breath. You feel Arjuna's hesitation rise like a hand on the bowstring, because a warrior in trouble is still a warrior, because the rules spoken before war still echo in the mind, even when the war itself has chewed those rules thin, because something in you wants the fight to be clean, even if nothing else has been. Krishna's head turns just slightly, enough that you see his profile, dusted gold in the sun. His voice comes low, urgent, cutting through the hesitation like a blade through silk. He reminds Arjuna of every time mercy was mocked, every time fairness was refused. He brings back the memory of a boy surrounded by many, brought down without honor. He brings back Draupadi in the hall, dragged and humiliated, while elders watched the floor. And then, brief as the snap of a bowstring, Krishna gives the command that will be remembered long after banners rot. Now, shoot him now. You're there, inside Arjuna's breath. You feel the war inside your ribs. You feel the pull between what you wished this could be and what it has become. Your fingers tighten. Kandiva rises. The bowstring draws back smooth, familiar, almost tender in its cruelty. Your sight narrows to the opening that fate has offered, an opening made of broken earth and a trapped wheel. Krishna holds the chariot steady, not with armor, not with weapons, with choice. The horses stamp, restless, sensing something final in the air. Dust swirls around their legs, curling like smoke in sunlight. The world seems to lean in, and Arjuna releases. The arrow flies, no gore, no ugliness, only inevitability. It goes as straight as truth finally spoken. It finds its mark. Karna's body stiffens, then slackens, and the great brightness of him dims, as if the sun itself swallowed a sigh. His longbow lowers. His struggle with the wheel ends not because the wheel is freed, but because the man has been unfastened from the fight. For a heartbeat, you hear nothing but your own breath, and the soft creak of leather reins in Krishna's hands. Then the field surges back into sound, distant conches, hooves, wheels, the endless restless movement of men who don't yet know their own endings. Krishna doesn't celebrate. He doesn't lift his hands. He doesn't look satisfied. He only exhales, slowly, evenly, like someone carrying a heavy vessel without spilling a drop. And you feel it again, that strange sensation that has followed you through every near miss. Being protected by someone who refuses to protect himself. The chariot rolls on. The horses toss their heads, foam at their mouths, impatient with stillness. The dust thickens again. The sun burns overhead like an unblinking eye, and Krishna, unarmed, unarmored, keeps driving as if the whole war is a narrow road, and his hands are the yawn. Only reason you don't tip into the ditch. But don't imagine it was easy. Don't imagine he sat there serene while his friends fell, while banners collapsed, while the earth shook under hooves and wheels. There were moments, 3 of them, when the universe held its breath. Even now, after Karna's brightness has dimmed, you can feel the tremor under Krishna's calm, like a river pretending to be a pond. The chariot keeps rolling, leather creaks, the horses snort and toss their heads, offended by every second they're forced to wait. And you, standing so close you could touch the wheel rim, notice something strange. Krishna's hands on the reins are steady, but the tendons along his wrists look like they're holding back a storm. The smell is hot dust and sweat and crushed grass. Somewhere, far off, a conch calls like a bird that refuses to leave the sky. And in that heat haze, your mind drifts, not away from the war, but deeper into it. Back to the first time Krishna almost stopped being only a charioteer. Back to Bhishma. It's earlier in the war, when the days still pretend to have beginnings and endings, when the morning light still feels clean for a few minutes before it turns harsh. You're on the Pandava side, and the air is already thick with grit. Banners flap, bright cloths snapping like impatient tongues. Bhishma comes on like an old lion that has decided finally to rise. You can hear him before you see him, the rumble of chariot wheels over hard ground, the deep, blunt sound of arrows striking shields like rain on clay pots. He isn't young, everyone knows that, and still he moves as if the years were only a rumor. Warriors hesitate when they shouldn't. Lines bend when they should hold. You're close enough to see Arjuna's jaw tighten, close enough to see Krishna's gaze sharpen, not with fear, but with that quiet measuring he does, like he's counting heartbeats. Bhishma advances, and it isn't just skill. It feels like a vow given a body. The Pandava ranks begin to thin in front of him, not in one terrible instant, but in a steady, unbearable way, like a lamp burning down while you keep pretending it will last. You can taste dust on your tongue. The sun presses on the back of your neck like a warm hand that doesn't know when to let go. And then it happens. Krishna moves, not with strategy, not with counsel, with anger. It's so fast your mind lags behind your eyes. He drops the reins as if they've turned to snakes. He's off the chariot, feet striking the earth, and the earth seems to flinch, and in his hand, it's as if the air itself becomes a blade. The Sudarshana chakra seems to appear rather than be drawn. A circle of light, spinning so cleanly, it doesn't look violent. It looks final. You feel it in your ribs, that sudden humming pressure, like the world has been plucked like a string. Men forget to breathe. Horses stamp and squeal, sensing something too big for them. Bhishma sees him coming, and Bhishma smiles. Not a cheerful smile, a warrior's smile, the kind that says, "At last, the real thing." You're standing there, and you realize you've never actually seen Krishna run like this. This isn't the playful boy in the lanes of Vrindavan. This is something older than kings. Arjuna leaps down after him, panic and devotion tangled together. He throws himself forward, grabbing at Krishna, catching cloth, catching arm, catching anything. Your heart bangs hard in your chest as if it wants to jump out and stop him too. Krishna's shoulders are rigid. His breath is controlled, but the heat around him feels different, like the sun has come lower just to watch. Arjuna clings, feet sliding in the loose dust, and for a moment, it's almost absurd. One man trying to hold back the turning of the worlds. The chakra keeps spinning. Then Krishna stops. Not because he's out of strength, because he finds it. He closes his fingers slightly, and the light tightens, contained. He turns back toward the chariot, jaw clenched like a vow, carved into stone. Bhishma stands there on his chariot, still smiling, still unbroken, but the field has changed. Everyone has felt it now. You can smell it too, sharp as struck metal under the warm stink of sweat, the scent of power restrained. Krishna climbs back onto the chariot. He takes the reins again. The horses sensibly pretend nothing happened. They snort like offended nobles and keep their eyes forward. And the war continues. Days later, no, it feels like lifetimes later, you come to the second moment. The sun has only risen and fallen a few times. The one you're already circling, even now, because it has Karna's shadow on it. The field is louder this day, not more crowded, just louder, like the earth has learned the names of the warriors and now repeats them in echo. Wheel, bow, conch, cry, wheel. Karna and Arjuna are facing each other again, and you can feel the world narrowing, tightening to the width of a bowstring. The sun is blazing overhead, and the heat makes the air shimmer. Even the metal on armor looks tired. Karna's chariot wheel sinks. It's such a simple thing. A wheel, mud, a brief cursed pause. And yet, everything holds on that pause, as if time itself has leaned in close. Karna bends, struggling, breath harsh, hands working like a man trying to pull destiny out of the ground by its hair. Arjuna raises Gandiva and hesitates. You see it in his elbow, in the tiny delay between thought and action. It isn't cowardice. It's the old sickness of the heart, mercy, confusion, that stubborn refusal to strike when the other man is already slipping. The rules of war whisper in the back of everyone's mind. Don't strike the unprepared. Don't strike the trapped. Your mouth goes dry. Krishna's face changes, not into rage like before. This is colder, a king's frost, a god's patience snapping thread by thread. His fingers tighten on the reins until the leather creaks. The horses toss their heads, feeling that pressure travel down the lines. And you feel it again, that hum in the air, the sense that something immense is pressing against a door that is almost opening. Krishna leans forward, his voice is low, and it lands like a stone dropped into a well. He reminds Arjuna of everything that was never given mercy. A woman dragged by her hair, a boy surrounded and brought down while warriors watched. Promises twisted like rope until they strangled the innocent. Arjuna's eyes flicker. You see the war inside him, duty against tenderness, honor against necessity. For a heartbeat, you think Krishna might do it himself, not because he needs to, because he can't bear the delay. The air feels sharper, as if even dust has edges. Krishna's posture is still, but it's the stillness of a drawn longbow. Then Arjuna's breath steadies, his shoulders set. The hesitation breaks, and the moment passes, because Arjuna moves and Krishna doesn't have to. You're left with the strange aftertaste of it, not triumph, relief, like you've watched someone take a blazing coal into their palm and choose not to close their fist. By the time you reach the third moment, the war has aged everyone. Even the young look older. Even the confident look hollowed out around the eyes. The light is different too. Late, slanting, tired. A sunset that feels like it has been postponed too many times. This is the day of the mace duel. The air is packed with onlookers, ringed with warriors who should be resting but can't. It's quiet in a tense way, the way a crowd gets when it knows it's about to witness something personal. Bhima steps forward, massive and breathing like a bull. Duryodhana stands opposite, proud as a temple flag in a storm. You're close enough to hear anklets clink, to smell crushed marigold garlands underfoot from some earlier hopeful ritual that now feels like a joke told too late. The maces swing. Each blow is a thunderclap. Dust rises in soft clouds around their legs, and the sun turns it gold, almost beautiful, until you remember what you're watching. The rules are known. Even the boys know them. Strike above the waist, fight clean. But Duryodhana doesn't. He dips his blow lower, again and again, chasing Bhima's thigh with a kind of stubborn desperation. It isn't clever. It's simply refusal. The refusal to lose like a man. A murmur runs through the crowd, like wind through dry leaves. Elders stiffen. Warriors glance at each other, uncertain where to put their eyes. And Krishna doesn't leap down this time. He doesn't summon light. He goes very still. So still, you notice the smallest things. The way his chest rises and falls, slow and controlled. The way a single grain of dust clings to his cheek and doesn't move. You're standing there with the heat on your face and the smell of trampled earth in your nose, and you realize this is harder for him than running. At Bhishma, because now the enemy isn't only a warrior, it's unfairness. It's the old familiar cheating that started in a dice hall and somehow grew teeth and armor. Krishna's eyes narrow. He looks at Bhima, not pleading, not commanding with words. He makes a small motion, so small most people miss it. A brief, sharp gesture toward the thigh. A signal. And you understand with a sinking feeling, Krishna is staying within his vow by the width of a hair. He won't swing the mace, but he will not let trickery win by pretending to be noble about it. Bhima's face hardens. He shifts his stance, and the next strike goes where it must. The duel ends, not with cheers that taste sweet. With a heavy exhale from the crowd, like everyone has been holding their breath for days. Krishna doesn't smile. He doesn't look satisfied. He looks contained, like a storm cloud forced into a clay pot. Later, much later, when the dust settles enough for you to see your own hands again, you find yourself back where you began, on the chariot, with Krishna holding the reins. The leather is warm from his grip. The horses flick their ears, restless, always ready to bolt toward the next crisis. And you can't stop thinking about those 3 moments. The chakra spinning to life, the cold fury at Arjuna's hesitation, the quiet, dangerous stillness as Duryodhana bent the rules like reeds. 3 times, Krishna could have broken his vow and ended things with one clean act. 3 times, he didn't. You're standing close, the dust settling on your skin like fine flour, and you finally understand something you can feel in your bones. His restraint wasn't passive. It was effort. It was the hardest work on the field. Because when you have the strength to end anything, truly end it, the real battle is not against enemies. It's against your own hand. And Krishna keeps his hand steady, reins in his palms, infinity behind his ribs, driving on, unarmed, through the burning afternoon as the war keeps asking him again and again to become what he promised he would not. So after all of that, the promises, the curses, the almost moments, the ancient storytellers leave us with one quiet lesson, because you can't stay inside Kurukshetra forever, not even in your mind. Eventually, the conches fade, the banners stop snapping, the air stops tasting like dust and hot metal. And what's left is that image you've been carrying. Krishna, unarmed, hands steady on the reins. Not weak, not confused, choosing restraint like it's a discipline, like it's a vow that costs him more than any weapon ever could. You can still feel the chariot under your feet when you think of Upaplavya, that quiet room, the oil lamps, the soft scuff of sandals on stone. Two men waiting for the same answer, both convinced they deserve it. And Krishna offers a choice that doesn't look like a choice at all. Armies on one side, himself on the other. And he makes one thing clear without making a spectacle of it. He will not lift a weapon. That moment lands like a seed. Because one brother chooses numbers, the other chooses a guide. And the storytellers are gentle but firm about what matters more in a world like this. Not how much force you can gather, but what kind of mind you keep when the ground starts shaking. Power is loud. Wisdom can sound like silence. Then you remember what it felt like to travel through Krishna's life, the weight of him carried lightly, the way only the truly strong can carry anything. Butter on his fingers as a child, the village dust on his ankles, a mountain held up like it's nothing, while the storm rages and everyone huddles close. It would have been so easy for him to live like a storm all the time, to solve every problem with a single overwhelming act. But even then, he keeps choosing something smaller, more human, more intimate. And that's where Dharma starts to feel less like a word and more like a lived thing, not a slogan, not a neat answer, a role you accept, a duty you carry, even when it doesn't flatter you. Krishna could do everything, so he chooses the one thing that lets everyone else become fully themselves. He steps back. You can taste the bitterness of that when you remember Gandhari, the palace air thick with incense and grief, the counting, the waiting, a mother with a blindfold and a heart that refuses to stop seeing. Her curse doesn't come out like poetry. It comes out like someone grabbing you by the wrist when you try to leave the room, and Krishna doesn't dodge it. He doesn't argue. He doesn't turn it into a lesson for her. He accepts it the way you accept monsoon rain when you've been walking for days, eyes closed, face lifted, letting it strike where it must. That's karma too, the way the tale makes you feel it. Not as a simple punishment, more like a great net of consequence spread over everyone, where even the powerful don't get to pretend they're untouched. A war like Kurukshetra doesn't end when the last conch goes quiet. It keeps moving into the survivors, into the widows, into the children who grow up with emptiness at the dinner mat. And Krishna, who guided, who warned, who restrained himself until his hands ached, doesn't exempt his own people from that web. He lets the curse stand, because actions have weight, and weight has to fall somewhere. Now bring your mind back to the chariot itself, not the idea of it. The real thing, leather reins warm from his palms, horses snorting, hooves impatient, the sun beating down like a drum. You're right there between two armies, and Arjuna's breath is wrong. His fingers don't want to close around the longbow. Everything in him is crying out that righteousness shouldn't look like this. And Krishna doesn't hand him a simple comfort. He gives him something steadier. He points to action without attachment. The work you do because it must be done, not because you're hungry for the prize. The kind of action that doesn't depend on applause. The kind that doesn't fall apart when the outcome turns bitter. That's why Krishna can guide without grabbing the victory for himself. Because if he fought, if he ended it with one clean sweep, the war would be over, and nothing inside the human heart would have changed. The field would be quiet, and the same pride, the same hunger, the same old blindness would sprout again somewhere else, in some other court, under some other banner. So he drives, he advises, he restrains the part of him that could swallow the whole horizon. And you see the difference between being able to act and being wise enough to choose how. There's a moment that stays sharp, even as everything else turns dreamlike. Karna's wheel sinking, dust rising around the axle, the sun blazing overhead like an unblinking eye, a second where fate holds its breath. Krishna urges the strike, not because he's cruel, not because he loves the fall of heroes, because Dharma in this war is not soft. People like to imagine righteousness as clean hands and easy choices. Kurukshetra strips that fantasy away without mercy. Sometimes the right action still tastes like ash. And then come those 3 near breaks, those flashes where you feel infinity press against a human vow. Bhishma advancing like an ancient tide. Arjuna hesitating when hesitation will cost everything. Duryodhana bending the rules with that smug calm that makes your teeth clench. In each of those moments, Krishna almost becomes the storm. You can practically hear the air tighten around him, like the world itself bracing. And then he stops himself. That's the part the storytellers want you to carry home, I think. Restraint isn't what you do when you're weak. Restraint is what you do when you're strong enough to ruin the world and you decide not to. If you've ever held your tongue when you could have scorched someone with words, you know a small version of it. If you've ever walked away when your pride wanted a fight, you've felt the edge of it. Now imagine that, scaled up to a god on a battlefield. So why didn't Krishna fight? Because the victory had to belong to those who earned it. Not earned through perfection. None of them had that. Earned through choosing, again and again, to stand up in the middle of confusion. If Krishna had taken the war into his own hands, the Pandavas might have received a kingdom. But they would not have become kings worth having. Arjuna would not have become the man who can act without being devoured by grief. Yudhishthira would not have learned that righteousness without courage becomes a kind of surrender. And Duryodhana, proud, stubborn, refusing to yield even as much as the point of a needle, would never have truly met the end of his own choices. He would have been spared the mirror, and the world would have been spared a war, yes, but it would have kept the same sickness, hidden, untreated. Krishna's silence, his refusal to lift a weapon, isn't absence. It's space. Space for human beings to grow large enough to hold their own lives. Space for dharma to become real through action. Space for karma to unfold honestly, without divine interference smoothing every rough edge. And when you let that settle, the whole journey feels complete in a quieter way. Not cheerful, not neat, but complete, like a lamp finally burning steady after flickering in wind. You can almost hear it now. The soft leather creak of the reins, the horses breathing, the faraway hush after the last day. And Krishna, still contained, still steady, carrying the weight without showing it. Not because he couldn't end it, because ending it wasn't the point. Guiding it was. And then it was over. The conch shells went silent. The sky, which had been bruised for so many mornings, looked almost ordinary again. A thin wind moved across Kurukshetra and pushed the dust in slow, tired waves. You stand where thousands once pressed shoulder to shoulder. Now there's space everywhere. So much space it feels wrong, like a song ending mid-verse. The smell is the first thing you notice, not the sharpness of battle anymore. Something flatter, dry earth, trampled grass, old smoke, and underneath it, the sweet, stubborn scent of ghee from lamps that were lit for those who won't rise again. Near the edge of the field, the chariot still waits, not charging, not trembling with the impatient stomp of horses, just waiting. Wood and leather and brass, all of it dulled by dust. The horses are there too, finally allowed to be horses again. Their flanks shine with sweat that no one is asking them to spend. They blow warm breath into the coolness of morning, and the sound is soft, like bellows in a quiet workshop. Someone has loosened the harness. Someone has unbuckled the straps that dug into skin for days. You can hear the little clicks as metal rings fall slack, and it's almost soothing. Almost. Because you keep expecting the world to tense again. A horn, a shout, Krishna's voice, calm and quick, turning the chariot at the last possible instant. But there's only the wind and the faint creak of leather moving as the horses shift their weight. The reins hang loose. They're not pulled tight in two steady hands anymore. They're just leather, simple, ordinary, dusty. And there he is. Krishna stands beside the chariot, not elevated, not glowing, not surrounded by any grandness. Just a man in travel-worn cloth, feet powdered with the same earth as everyone else. His hair is dark, a little tousled, as if the war has been using it as a pillow. He reaches up and touches the yoke, the way someone touches a doorway after a long journey. Not reverent, not showy, familiar. Then his hands come down, and the reins slip from his fingers. They fall into the dust with a sound so quiet you almost miss it. A little whisper, a small surrender. You feel it in your chest anyway, like a lamp being set down after carrying it through a storm. Around him, men move like shadows who haven't remembered how to be solid yet. Survivors pass with hollow eyes, holding water pots, holding bandages, holding nothing at all. Some walk as if they've forgotten where they were going, and the earth will have to teach their feet again. A few steps away, someone is trying to clean a sword with sand and a cloth. The motion is automatic, mindless, like sweeping a floor after a feast that went badly. The cloth rasps, the grains scrape. No one looks satisfied by the shine. The Pandavas are somewhere out there in the spread of tents and broken standards. Kings now, but you can feel that the word sits heavy on them, like a new necklace that doesn't yet fit the throat. You can sense Arjuna's longbow being laid down, not ceremoniously, just carefully, like setting down a burden that has left marks on the palms. You can almost see Yudhishthira's gaze traveling over the field, not counting victories, not searching for praise, only taking in what the earth has taken. And through it all, Krishna remains strangely simple. He doesn't call anyone to gather. He doesn't demand attention. He just turns toward the horses. He steps close enough that they can smell him. They know him, not as a god, not as a strategist, as the steady presence who held them firm when the air was full of flying terror. He rests a hand on one warm neck. The horse flicks an ear, then leans into the touch like it's been waiting for permission to be comforted. You're close enough to hear the animal's breath, deep and slow now, close enough to smell the crushed basil someone tied to a bridle as a charm, close enough to see the dust stuck to Krishna's fingers, turning the lines of his hand a little paler. Then he steps back. The horses are led away, one by one, not dragged, not driven, led the way you lead someone home after they've seen too much. A boy, barefoot, ribs showing under his tunic, takes a rope and clucks softly. The horse follows, and the sound of hooves is gentle now, not thunder, just dull taps on packed earth, fading with each step. The chariot looks suddenly enormous without them, empty. It's strange how quickly an empty thing becomes only a thing. A weapon becomes wood, a war cart becomes a cart, a throne becomes a chair. The sun climbs a little higher, and light spills across the field in a color that almost resembles mercy. It catches on scattered arrow shafts and broken wheels and the edge of a fallen banner. It makes everything look less sharp. Krishna stays a moment longer, standing beside the chariot as if listening for something. Maybe he's listening to the last echoes of conch shells. Maybe he's listening to the quiet underneath quiet, that deep hum the world makes when it's still turning. Or maybe he's listening for nothing at all. At last, he begins to walk. No entourage crowds him. No golden canopy follows him. He doesn't carry a weapon, and he doesn't carry a prize. He carries nothing in his hands, but you can feel the weight of what he leaves behind, not like a chain, like a completed vow. As he passes, the dust clings to his ankles. A breeze lifts the edge of his cloth, and for a moment, you see how ordinary his stride is. Heel, toe, like any traveler on any road. You find yourself walking too, just a little. As if your feet want to follow the line, his footsteps draw across the earth. The air changes as you move away from the densest part of the field. There's a hint of water somewhere, maybe a stream, maybe a well being drawn again. There's the far-off smell of cooking fires beginning, cautious and small, because life is stubborn and hunger doesn't wait for grief to finish. Behind you, the chariot remains, reins in the dust, wood cooling in the sun. No more commands snapping through the air. Ahead of you, Krishna keeps walking. He doesn't look back. Not because he's forgotten, because some things don't need looking back to be carried. He goes on toward the edge of Kurukshetra, toward the roads that lead to cities still standing, toward homes that will have to learn new faces and new names. And as his figure grows smaller in the distance, the field grows quieter. Not the silence of emptiness, the silence of a bell after it's been struck, still vibrating, still alive, but no longer asking anything of you. The wind smooths the dust where the rains fell. A single blade of grass, bent flat for days, begins to lift again. And in that wide, settling hush, the world continues.